The Maw. Referring to it in the Shadowlands in conversation often elicits something like bile, maybe? A queasy or uneasy feeling of, oh, don't mention that trash doo-doo zone. Even if personally I don't feel that way, I tend to not engage in debate over why I think the Maw is cool. I would get tons of down votes and hate mail like really quick. Whatever the Maw was meant to be in Shadowlands' early design, basically a loop that would get you keys to get into Torghast, that notion was turned upside its head after massive backlash. Critics rightfully didn't want a repeat of patch 8.3, where you farmed a currency to buy a key to do a thing at most a few times a week. But I'm going to skip past what the Maw is and why many have railed against it and talk about the experience in the 9.1 PTR. I've mentioned it in passing multiple times throughout my feedback, but this time we're going to take a closer look at the Maw 2.0. What has changed, what has not, how does it fit into the 9.1 patch, and maybe most importantly, do you need to still step foot in there? Hey, it's Soul with a video. It's going to be feedback, and speaking of feedback, I'm going to try to be a little bit more high energy, unlike the last time. Anyway, let's get right into it. The Maw doesn't get all 2.0 until just a little bit into the new Chains of Domination campaign. There's a bit of exposition before you get back conveniences, like being able to use any of your mounts. You won't lose Stygia anymore, and the Eye of the Jailer mechanic is going to get turned off. No spoilers, but I like that there's a bit of story attached to this. Like when we immerse ourselves into it, there's a bit of a cathartic feeling when the quest completes and whatever mental pain and anguish that we have of the Maw is, I guess in a way, cauterized, even if we might still be scarred. And those mark the most obvious changes happening to the zone. The narrative of the Maw being this inescapable hellscape designed to chew you up and spit you out has been compromised, and it's now under assault by the Four Covenants. Translation, the Maw has turned into a more or less standard zone with a kind of Mechagon hybrid approach. I'll just drop into the action and fill you in on what there is to do, starting with what hasn't changed much, or at all, at least in this version of the PTR. And by the way, PTR, things could change, yada yada yada. Venari is still around, and she still offers the same Maw perks to buy if you haven't already. She doesn't give weekly quests anymore, but really there's no need. There's a lot more daily and weekly content to do anyway. Paragon reputation has been added to her as a bonus for those of us who repped up with her during 9.0. Her Paragon box has a chance to drop, among other things, the Soulbound Gloomcharger's Reins. It's a horse, but it's a pretty sweet looking horse at that. Farming more Venari rep probably isn't going to be a top priority for you, but there are other things that'll have you earning extra Venari rep, whether it's intended or not. I'm glad that they didn't totally forget about her, but I'm sure that more than a handful of folks went out of their way to avoid going to the Maw in the first place. The old events of the Wrath of the Jailer and the hunts in the Beast Warrens, those are still there too. So far they don't seem to have changed, and I've yet to see like a significant drop, but at least early on in the patch when everyone's scrambling to kill everything that moves, you might as well follow the crowd if they happen to be going for it. And all the rares and special encounters are still there. The difference with all this being, you don't have to pick and choose or otherwise worry about the Eye of the Jailer affecting you with inconveniences. Now let's get to the new stuff. A new weekly world quest is going to pop up in the eastern region of the Maw, where you're going to have done a bit of questing in. It's a standard fill up the bar quest, and from my observations, it's given either 250 anima or gear that you can upgrade. One of the reasons to go into the Maw now will be to support the new Covenant Assaults, the biggest of the several events added to the zone. They seem to work on a schedule similar to patch 8.3's Old God Assaults. So one Covenant Assault will happen for a few days, and then it's going to switch to another for a few more days until the reset, after which it rotates to a third, and then you get a fourth until it completes a neat little squared circle. So it'll take 2 weeks to go through all 4 covenants, and we'll probably do that until the World of Warcraft is shut down. Each assault takes over a part of the Maw, and in the footage that I'm using, Team Necrolord is assaulting Perdition Hold. You might be familiar with this. It's the area with all the elite mobs, and hardly anyone went here unless they managed to get into a group or if they were a tank. So it's really different when it's under attack, and I like it. This is freaking great. Seeing all these mobs suffer at the hands of friendly NPCs. What's also cool about the Covenant assaults is that if an assault is active and it happens to be your character's chosen Covenant, there's a way to immediately teleport between here and your Covenant Sanctum. Also, some friendly NPCs will join you in battle if you just click on them, as long as they're a part of your Covenant. But notice here that the Necrolords are assaulting, but my Covenant, the Kyrians, have a small presence here too, so I can get a person to help me out for a few minutes. The other Covenant assaults are treated the same way, like if the Kyrian were like the primary, then the Venthyr would be the secondary. It kind of works like that. I really like these quests because for the most part, they're fairly easy. Now, never mind that I'm on my main and that he's a tank, I think that these quests are meant to give this feeling of, ooh, it's payback time, Ma, we're gonna stick it to ya, and this delivers pretty well. A Covenant assault entails 4 quests, followed by a topper that feels pretty darn good. The whole feeling of charging into battle with allies and seeing the chaos, it's really cool. I always dig that sort of feeling. But of course, there are rewards to get and work for. There's upgradable gear, as I mentioned before. There is, of course, reputation and gold, and there are soul cinders as well, which I'll talk about later. Each assault has its own mount reward that you have a chance to get. It's based on whatever Covenant assault is active. And then there's this item here, this chain link. I've seen it drop from a little bit of everything, from mobs to end of event rewards like these and other places too. It's not just Covenant assaults. Gathering 200 of these will take a while, but it's going to earn you a mount that looks like this. Yes, I can't say how long it's going to take to earn enough, but you can definitely earn more than a few of these chains per day. So if outdoor content is your thing and you want something to work for, this mount is one of many things that you can work for. Thankfully, it's one of several color variations, so if color is not important, there are other ways to get your own walk in hand. Another event that occurs is the Tormentors of Torghast. It's very similar to the Wrath of the Jailer event, but it's themed after Torghast, and it's a little bit harder, but also easier at the same time. An area of the Maw is suddenly under the control of Torghast minions, and it even takes on similar themes to the cell blocks. So like a Coldheart event will have mobs that have additional health. A Soulforge's event has mobs that deal extra fire damage, that sort of thing. But it goes the other way around too. Mobs drop power-ups, and there are souls to save that offer more buffs to help you along. Just like the Wrath of the Jailer event, killing enough mobs summons a big old boss dude to take down, and once that's defeated, the event is over until it starts right back up again. What can make this and the Wrath of the Jailer event a little bit more chaotic than before is that these overlap with existing rares in the nearby area. We can probably expect Stygia farmers to guiltlessly drag these mobs out into the open to double dip on credit and Stygia and those chains to collect. The newer zone of Korthia is attached to the Maw, and with that attachment comes a sort of relationship between the two zones. At the moment, there's a reputation vendor that sells some cool stuff, including Korthian armaments. It's a loot box that contains a random piece of upgradable gear. If you were wondering what the heck to do with Stygia in 9.1, this is probably a good start, especially considering that there's no reputation requirement to buy these boxes. There's also this Vault Anima Tracker, which I presume will let you find additional anima while completing Covenant assaults. As you progress through patch content, you can work towards researching perks that can get you additional Stygia from the Maw and anima from world quests and rares anywhere in the Shadowlands zones, at least I think. There's a lot more going on here, but I'm going to stick mostly to the Maw. You can check out my impressions of Korthia in another feedback video that I made that's hopefully not too out of date already. So there's a lot to do in the Maw, and there are far fewer restrictions to bother you. That said, the way we'll approach the Maw 2.0 will depend on our gameplay styles. Solo and otherwise more casual content type players have a lot more to do and a lot more to get for it. Solo players shouldn't have too much trouble getting through the events. I'm totally kidding. Those who are going alone will no doubt have a bit of trouble during the dynamic events, as those are populated with less forgiving elite mobs. The buffs and debuffs there are a little bit broken and inconsistent, but from what I've seen, it suggests that solo players will be seeking out these clickables to give them buffs and perks to help them along. The most important part about these dynamic events is that they credit the group, so the bar fills up from everyone's contributions, and you want to at least make sure that you tag the big mob at the end so you can get credit. The Covenant Assaults, however, are just plain fun, with the caveat that this is repeatable content that, like all things, will wear out its welcome. But I do like that these quests are localized and are easy enough to jump right into. There's plenty of time to do them, but no doubt some of this will end up being weird for those who only play on certain days of the week with no compromise available. In that case, I think it would be best if after a rotation of the 4 Covenant Assaults, the order would switch itself up. Progression-minded players are going to look specifically at the Covenant Assaults and Torment of Torghast events as requirements for their higher-end needs. Once per week, these events drop Soul Cinders, a new reagent to upgrade legendaries to levels 5 and 6. At 50 cinders per event, that makes for 150 cinders per week, on top of completing higher layers of Torghast for more of these cinders. Early on, you bet their ass that they'll be on top of these events because upgrading a rank 4 legendary to a rank 5 will cost 400 cinders, and from the looks of it, we can obtain at most 360 cinders per week. Speaking just for me, all in all, the mod 2.0 added a lot of world content and cool rewards to boot. But it was also mindful of people who are more focused on late game content and didn't want to add too much to their plate. And peppered throughout this is even more anima to help with the long-term rewards from 9.0. It doesn't take much looking around at all to find a handful of people who really didn't like the MAW, and I don't know if this overhaul is enough to reel them back in for long, but frankly, it'd be their loss if they wanted to miss out. Throughout my playthroughs, I think I've put about like 10 hours worth of goofing around and testing here, so it's hard to say what I don't like about the mod 2.0 apart from the many bugs and the general incompleteness of Covenant Assaults. I guess the weirdest thing is that the reputation vendor in Korthia requires Stygia, and Stygia is not earned in Korthia. You have to come back here into the Maw. But I guess the expectation I have from the Maw these days is that there's more to help us than hinder us. I'm hoping to see more clickables and power-ups to make us feel even more effective in the zone. So how about this as a suggestion to maybe change player behavior but give them a lot of fun too? A player goes in and they see the Covenant Assault. They complete it, and it gives the player a cool Covenant-themed buff that stays active in the Maw until the next assault begins. And then the buff falls off and we're compelled to do the assault again. Now yeah, it makes the Covenant Assaults feel required, but I don't know, I think that's a good kind of required because it doesn't take terribly long to do it, and it provides a cool thing that lasts for days, encouraging repeat visits back into the Maw outside of completing those general events. I think that's it for now. Those are my impressions, and I hope that these help you understand what's going on, and regardless if it got you excited or horrified about 9.1, I am grateful that you listened in. So please like the video as a token of appreciation, consider subscribing for more stuff like this and all things Warcraft, and I'll see you around. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.